In today's episode, I'm checking out Microsoft Purview adaptive scopes. What are they? How do they work? And most importantly, how they can save you so much time. Check it out. Today's video is sponsored by CISADE, who have just launched its new AI agent builder, and it comes complete with pre-built, ready-to-use AI agents. It's transforming the way IT teams work. For more details, check out the link below or visit them today at CISADE.com. Hi everyone, great to see you. Welcome to the channel. Andy here. You know, it amazes me how many people don't know about this or are not actually using it, and it will just save you so much time. So in today's episode, I'm going to compare kind of using tools like Purview's information protection just with the standard set of tools, and then comparing it with the use of adaptive scopes. So we're going to talk about exactly what they are, how they work, and how you can set them up. Now, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, we'd love you to come on board. So go ahead, click on that subscribe button and ring that bell up there and come and join my learning community. And if you'd like more, why not consider signing up to my Patreon site? This is where you'll get access to full Microsoft courses, monthly Zoom calls, and exclusive content. So details down below. Okay, so I think without any further jibber jabber, let's take a look now at adaptive scopes in Microsoft Purview. And if you've got questions and comments, get those down below as I always answer them. Okay, you enjoy. Okay, so I'm kicking off my demo here in the Microsoft Purview Admin Center. And to get here, you can do one of two things. You can either come in through the 365 Admin Center and come in down here into Microsoft Purview, or you can simply just go into purview.microsoft.com. Bearing in mind that you do have to have the appropriate permissions for this. Either you need to be a compliance admin or you need to be a Microsoft Purview administrator. So what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about adaptive scopes. Now, many of you might know the various solutions that we've got here in Purview. So things like information protection, we've got insider risk management, records management, and so on. And you can, I mean, from the very beginning, you could create policies based on users and group membership. But what we now have is a real expansion of what we call adaptive scopes. And this is a classic example of what we call ABAC, attribute-based application. And we saw it in Microsoft 365 a few years ago with the inclusion of things like dynamic groups and things like that. Basically, the idea is that if you set up a dynamic scope, let's say, for example, for a group of users, anyone who falls into that scope or becomes a member of that group will have this policy automatically applied. And when they leave the group, the policy is not applied anymore. And this is particularly powerful when you look at things like conditional access, and especially here in Microsoft Purview. So what I want to do is talk about adaptive scopes and exactly what are they and how they work. Before you do start looking at any of the solutions in Purview, what you really want to do is you want to come into the settings here and just take a look at some of these settings. Now, just a quick reminder that roles and scopes here, we have in terms of admin permissions, you've got your Entra ID admin permissions here, but you've also got things like your role groups. And these are your Microsoft Purview and your security groups for Defender. So this is where you can break down specific admin roles. So for example, if you wanted to make somebody an auditing manager or a compliance manager or somebody who is just going to carry out e-discovery tasks, you could, rather than giving them full compliance permissions, you can give them very granular roles, which is super powerful, by the way. Now, in addition to this, what we also have is we have this feature called adaptive scopes. And with the likes of an adaptive scope, what we can do is I can create a new scope. I'll just call this scope, I work in Norway a lot, so I'll just call this my Oslo scope. and I'll click on next. And it then says, okay, what do I want to do? Do I want to select a specific administrative unit, or do I want to target this to the full directory? So, for example, if you were the administrator in Oslo or in New York or in Manchester or in London, I could create a specific scope in terms of Microsoft Purview that would just be targeted towards those groups of users or devices or users. In this case, I'm going to target it to the entire directory. And as you can see, I can target this adaptive scope based on users, SharePoint sites, or Microsoft groups, which of course, groups are teams, teams are groups. So if you're using Microsoft Teams, this can be particularly useful. So I'm going to click on next. And again, we have a choice. You can either do what we call an advanced query builder, where if you know the query, you can actually type this in, or alternatively, I can just use a simple query. And this is you based on a specific attribute. So for example, the name, I can say it's equal to, or maybe it starts with or doesn't start with. So Oslo sales, for example, something sales. In this case, I'm just going to say equal to, and I'm going to say sales here. Now, of course, I can go off, I can add in additional attributes. So, and you can also create custom attributes as well. So you can do your own custom attributes. And that's particularly useful, for example, the likes of SharePoint, where you can target specific audiences. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to accept that. I'm just going to click on next here. So now that we've clicked on next, what exactly can we do with this now that we've created this scope? Where can we use this scope, for example? Well, you could come into any of these tools. And then, as I said, one of the key things is before you start creating any rules using Microsoft Purview, you really want to get the settings set up first. So for example, things like data loss prevention, you can come in here, and again, we have some options here. So these options affect potentially every user. We might have things like information protection. You might have insider risk management settings here, all of which are really important. So I'm going to come into my adaptive scopes, and let me just show you, first of all, where you can use this. So I'm going to come into the various solutions here, and I'm going to come into information protection. So with information protection, super useful, especially if you're using the likes of AI, Copilot, ChatGPT. Information protection is so important because it allows users to not only label and classify their documents, but it also encrypts them as well, and it can protect them from prying eyes outside your organization. So let me give you an example of where we can use adaptive scopes here. I'm going to come in and let's say I'm going to create a new sensitivity label. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to say I want to create a label, and we'll just call this let's say we'll call it my sales confidential. Okay, so with my sales confidential, I'm just going to copy this across and just paste this in here. I can also put in a little description. Now you'll notice that some of these are actually required. You've got the little exclamation mark in here, and you can put in notes as well. I can choose a color. So again, this is confidential. I might say, purple, blue, whatever color you want, and I'll just click on next. Now, the next thing is here, you can see that we've got obviously files and other data assets. You've got emails and you've got meetings. Now, just a quick mention that if you're using meetings, you do need, if you want to do things like chat and so on, you do need Teams Premium for this. So just be aware of that. Now you will notice here that we have got things like calendar, Outlook, and privacy settings for other things like Microsoft Groups. So with Microsoft Groups, there's a little series of steps that you need to configure, and basically you just need to run a couple of PowerShell commands. So really just if you just scroll down to the bottom of this document, you can see that there's a series of PowerShell commands here. So basically just copy paste into PowerShell, copy paste. You'll need to log out, log back in again, and that will then be active. Okay, now just to save time today, I'm not going to go ahead and do that, but the principle is very, very easy to do. So again, just remember, just click on that little label there. Okay, so just before we go any further, a quick message from today's sponsor, CISADE. This episode is brought to you by CISADE. Get the only platform with generative AI baked into every element of IT management, so you can deliver exceptional service automatically. And just for our viewers, you can get 20% off the CISADE Copilot, and the link's in the description below. Okay, so now I'm going to click on here. So what do I want to do with this scope? What do I want to do with this rule rather? Do I want to control access, apply content marking, and also protect Teams and chats? Now you'll notice that this is grayed out. It's because I don't have a Teams premium license. But I want to control access and I want to apply content marking in this case. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to say, okay, do I want to assign a permission to a user? Am I going to allow offline access? Or am I going to put an expiry date in here? Again, you've got those options. So if it's highly sensitive, you don't want the user to, for example, download a document, you can basically say, no, I don't want to allow offline access. They can only access this through the web. Okay, I'm going to assign the permissions, and as you can see, we have the SharePoint permissions here. And I'm going to basically say this is all users and groups in the organization, authenticated users, specific users and groups, or a specific address or domain. So for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to just say all users and groups. And for the permissions, you have your different levels of permissions here. You can see editor, a viewer basically is just read only, but you can also customize these permissions as well. So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to say, I'm going to give them editor permissions here, and I'm just going to click on save. And as you can see, you've got some additional security features here, things like dynamic watermarking. You can put in certain text based on different groups. So if you're a member of this group or in this location, again, you can see this is another example of where dynamic membership is coming in. Double key encryption, if your client or your piece of software supports this, then yes, go ahead and click on that as well. As I've mentioned in the past, you can also put in a watermark. This goes across the document, and you can also have for example, a header piece of text. So again, in this case, I'm just going to say, yeah, I'm going to paste this in my sales confidential. I'll say this is font size 12. I'm going to put this in red on the top left-hand corner. So I'm going to click on save onto that and click on next. And do you want to enable auto labeling? Now, auto labeling is basically data loss prevention policies. So it integrates not just information protection, but data loss prevention policies as well. And oh my goodness, I gotta say, it's so much more powerful than manually having your users assign labels. Because you don't have to train your users, it will pick up the content automatically. And if you do this manually, you've got to train your users, and it can be quite resource intensive. It can be quite expensive to do. Detect content that matches these conditions. So you can choose whether it contains a specific group. I can put in, for example, sales, and I can say add what type of sensitive information. So you've got all the different types of sensitive information here. So for example, if I scroll right down to the bottom, let's say, for example, we've got things like somebody's physical address, driver's license number, bank account number, credit card number. All of these could be considered sensitive information. And you can see it's detecting that information. So any emails, any documents, any attachments that contain this. So what do I want to do? I want to protect the privacy and external user access. Again, this is for groups and sites. Now you'll notice that this is grayed out. It's because I didn't switch it on at the beginning. Now you know how to do that. Okay. So now that we've done that, I'm going to go ahead and create that label. So what I'm going to do is, I did actually, I target it to the sales group. Now, what do I want to do? Do I want to publish this label, or do I want to not create a policy yet? So I want to automatically apply this label rather than publish the label manually. So I'm going to come in here, and you can see what this is now doing is this is now targeting all of these groups. And in fact, it's not targeting the groups, it's targeting the content. So any content from any employee, it will pick up that. Now, if I just say, actually, no, I don't want to do that, what I might do now is I might want to, let's say, create a manual policy. So to create a manual policy and target it, and this is where we can use things like dynamic membership in, I can come in, I can say, okay, I want to create a label policy. Let's create a new policy. So we'll publish a label. And look, again, sensitivity labels that you want to publish. So these are the sensitivity labels. And sure enough, here's my sales confidential. I'm going to add this to a policy. But look, who do I want to direct this to? So I don't want to put this to an admin unit. I want to perhaps target this to, for example, users and groups. Again, I can change that if I want to. I can say all users and groups or specific users and groups, and you can include them as well. So again, for the demo here, I'm just going to use all users and groups here and click on next. Again, you've got some various options here. If you want the user label to be enforced, do you want to apply a default label document for both the document, for groups, emails? This is very good. Inherit the label from attachments. So again, automatically apply the label. So that means that if the document is labeled and you send it in an email, the email will pick up that sensitivity label. Okay, again, I'm going to just click on next. I'm not going to bother with those default labels there. I'm just going to accept that, and I'm just going to say this is my Oslo policy. Click on next, and I'm just going to submit that. Okay, and we're done. So in that demo, you saw me with information protection, and I applied it to either a group of users or a group of devices or a group. So in this demo, what I want to do is, again, I'm going to come back into my Microsoft Purview, but this time let's look at another solution. And this time I'm going to come down and let's say, for example, I'm going to choose communications compliance. So I'm going to click on create policy. And as you can see here, this policy is just a standard. This is kind of the quick way of creating that policy. But just as with all the other tools that I've showed you, if you choose to customize the policy and click next, you can now see that that adaptive scope option has indeed come in, and it's different from these others. So all users, selected users, and this is the dynamic kind of membership. So if I go ahead now and let's say bring in that Oslo sales scope, if I bring them in, anyone, as long as you are a member of that scope. So for example, if you're in a school and you're a year one student, great. But if you change location dynamically, if you move groups or you move role, immediately you will come out of that scope and this rule will no longer affect you. So that is the power and the benefit of adaptive scopes. It really is absolutely awesome. So there you have it, adaptive scopes in Microsoft Purview. It will just save you so much time. It really will. Hey, listen, I really appreciate you joining me today. And just a reminder, if you've got questions and comments, get those down below. I always respond. And if you've not subscribed, bump that subscribe button and give me a big like. It really does help the channel. Also, just a quick shout out to CISADE, who sponsored today's episode. Really do appreciate it. Check out their amazing AI tools. They're absolutely awesome. Details below. That's it for this week. Thanks so much again for joining me. I'll catch you next time. Take care.